All right, let's take a second and talk about realistic progression for people that are new to the gym, new to barbell training, utilizing a 3-day training protocol, or 3-day training split. So first off, we're going to assume here that you are a new lifter. You either have never lifted before, or you've been away from the gym for a very long time, and you're coming back trying to build your strength back up. In this situation, I always recommend people to go with a Monday, Wednesday, Friday style of training. And of course, it can be Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, I don't care, but the point is 3 days per week in a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. So you have a workout, 48 hours, a workout, 48 hours, and then two full days to recover from that week's work. So here's what this would look like for 6 weeks, how the progression might go for 6 weeks for a reasonably strong male. Now this is, again, adult male, not a teenager. If you're a female, the numbers may be a little lower, but the progression is actually the same, and the amount of growth you'll see over that first 6 weeks may actually be comparable as well. So starting week number 1 in the black here, this applies to all of the lifts, but for the example's sake, we're going to assume this is applying to the squat because it is the driver of all progress. So we start out, I have you come in and squat 3 sets of 5, and we work up, we kind of find out what weight works for you, where you can kind of hold your form together as you learn the movement, but also be challenged. And we find out, for easy math, that 135 is the magic number. Barbell and a single large wheel on either side. You go away, you come back 2 days later. You might be a little bit sore because it's the first time you've ever worked out, and that's all right. But we get in there, we do it anyway, and this time we do 3 sets of 5 plus 10 pounds over the previous session. Now, the only reason we're doing 10 pounds here is because that was your first session, you had to learn the movement. There's been quite a bit of improvement just in this 2-day period. So you do your 3 sets of 5, you leave, you come back 2 days later. This time we had 5 pounds, and from here on we're going to be adding 5 pounds because slow and steady wins the race. That's a very true statement. The old tortoise and the hare story is true for a reason. So you come back in. You take Saturday, Sunday off. You come back in Monday. Now we're doing 155. Tuesday off, 160 on Wednesday. Thursday off, 165 on Friday. This is not very complicated, and it's very easy to see how over the course of 6 weeks, incrementally adding weight, 5 pounds per session to your 3 sets of 5, you end a 6-week period at 225, a full 90 pounds above your previous 135. Now, we know that the 135 was artificially light because you've never trained before. We also know that if you came in and you only squatted 135, if we put 225 on your back on day 1, it would kill you. It would collapse you. It would smush your spine. You'd be the center of a black hole crumbling into pieces. We don't want to do that. We prefer people to be alive. They're much more fun to interact with. So we didn't. We start you at 135 and we run the thing slow and steady. And we end 6 weeks 90 pounds stronger on 3 sets of 5 than we were. This would also apply to your bench press, your overhead press, and your deadlift. Now, the numbers in those situations would be a little bit lower. So take the bench press, for example. We don't bench every single session. We bench every other session. So you might do 135, no bench on Wednesday, 140 on Friday. No bench on Monday, 145 on Wednesday. So it's every other session. And overhead press is done the same way. So where you were not benching on Wednesday, that's where you're going to be overhead pressing. For most people, I will have you deadlift all 3 days or Monday and Friday, because the deadlift being really the heaviest movement of them all, pretty much everyone has the ability to very rapidly increase their ability to pick something up off the floor in that first 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the person. So you'll probably deadlift, 135, for example, on Monday, and then I would jump you up 20 pounds on Friday. Come back on Monday, you're going to go up another 10 or 20 pounds, another 10 or 20 pounds. After that 3rd or 4th session of 10 or 20 pound increases, we may drop down to 5 or 10 pound increases, but the idea remains the same. So this is not intended to say, look, this is exactly what you can expect. This is exactly how to do it. I can outline that in another video. If people have questions, we can do a kind of a podcast or a seminar on it. But This is just to give you an idea of what you can expect and why you should be doing the big four, the bench, the press, the deadlift, and the squat, because those movements are going to give you the most return for your time. You could do dumbbell curls in here, and I don't care if you do. You could do cable flies or use a leg press or any of these other things, but none of them can be ratcheted up as quickly for a new lifter as the barbell lifts. What's more, none of them carry over to the real world as well as the barbell lifts. There's a lot of this really silly talk about sport-specific training, and most trainers, most educational facilities and academia in general seems to think that sport-specific for baseball, for example, might be throwing a weighted baseball. If you're a pitcher, is the baseball that you have, is throwing that an act of physicality or skill? It's both, right? Now, if you are throwing that baseball and you've then practiced throwing an 8-ounce baseball, is the skill required to throw an 8-ounce baseball different than a 3-ounce or whatever the official weight of a baseball is? I would argue that it is. I would argue that the physics of a throw radically change when you increase the weight. So why on earth would you have your pitcher throw a weighted baseball? How about you have him overhead press and we'll get his upper body strong, and then he can go practice his pitching with a real baseball and practice the skill that he's trying to hone. The same thing goes for MMA athletes and jiu-jitsu athletes. There's this idea that MMA athletes shouldn't squat. Why? Because it's hard on your knees, as if MMA is not. Squatting, if done properly, will strengthen your knees more than just about anything you can do. Certainly more than anything you can do in jiu-jitsu practice. It will strengthen your knees and prepare them to take the dynamic forces that they will be exposed to in a jiu-jitsu match. It's not going to guarantee you won't get injured, but it will lower your risk for injury. So that's a side tangent. I'll shut up before I get any deeper. I could talk on that for hours. It's a pet peeve of mine. So anyway, that's the basic barbell, the idea behind the basic barbell program and the progression to help you get as strong as you can get as fast as possible. And then once this sort of thing peters out, we switch over so that you don't have to grind yourself into a pulp. So you wouldn't run this for 6 months at a time. You'd run this for 2 months, maybe 3 months. 4 to 6 only if you're like, never touched a barbell, you're an 18-year-old boy who eats everything in sight and lives with mom. They can run that for 6 months. You can't, but you can run it for 1 to 2 months and get really strong, way stronger than you are now. So if you're not a member of the Barbell Club, drop a message or drop a comment down below, shoot me a message. We'll get you signed up, get you started. I want you to get stronger this year. And trust me, this is the best way that you're going to find to do it. Out.